Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Storytime with Rob. Today's story it's a really basically a history lesson, maybe a refresher. Many of you are going to know this, many of you remember this. If you know anything about history, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. But for those of you adults who have younger kids, you need to share this with them because they need to know this. This is a great part of American history. This is called the Code Talkers. FDR described the attack on Pearl Harbor as a day that will live in infamy. Yet to no one would the attack be more infamous or insulting than to the mountain men. I mean the rugged, rip-roaring, super patriotic, all-American mountain men, who upon learning of the news of Pearl Harbor grabbed their muskets and hunting rifles and poured in by the hundreds to the draft boards demanding the right to fight for their country. The mountain men, straight and strong and made of iron, they astonished the Marine Corps DIs with their sense of discipline and precision. They kept their quarters immaculate, and they marched like machines. They hardened themselves with wicked regimens above and beyond the call of duty, such as bathing in the snow, and they trained relentlessly in summer swelter that made even the city boy Marines faint dead away. Admiring comrades in the corps called them the toughest men on earth, the mountain men. You see, among the greatest challenges for Allies in World War II was coming up with a code that the highly trained and ingenious Japanese cryptographers could not crack. The Japanese were so good, in fact, at making codes that whenever we Americans deciphered one, Rear Admiral Anderson called it magic. Nobody could beat them. Not even the prodigious Germans when it came to deciphering American codes. That is until somebody suggested that we enlist the aid of the mountain men. Now obviously none of these rough-hewn individuals had been educated in the field of cryptology. Yet, what they lacked in formal schooling, they more than made up for in ways that already impressed the Marines, and in other ways which the Allies hoped would confound the Axis. And so the mountain men, 450 of them, were recruited into their own school of secret communications. And of the 450 recruits, only 30 of them failed to qualify. And the rest went on to accomplish what nobody in the Allied forces had been able to do since the war had begun. They totally baffled the Japanese. They devised a code so impenetrable that throughout the remainder of the war, not one syllable was ever deciphered by the enemy. Not one. The mountain men came to be known as the Code Talkers. They traveled to battlegrounds everywhere for the purpose of sending and receiving vital, secret information in a code which only they understood. In dense jungles, in deep trenches, in beachfront foxholes, or bobbing assault barges, the Code Talkers huddled over radio headsets transmitting hundreds of messages. And the enemy, well, the enemy, they shook their heads and the war was won. In no small part because of our Code Talkers. Yet more amazing than their ingenuity was their fierce patriotism. For these mountain men were American Indians who not 8 decades previous had been driven from their homes. Yes, they had been driven from their 4 sacred mountains of Navajo country. driven on foot more than 300 miles to a red man's concentration camp called Fort Sumner. And yet, despite this terrible indignity toward those of whom they were descended, these Navajo enlisted in our armed forces in great numbers. And they served with incredible enthusiasm, even to the point of sharing with the white man one of the red man's most profound weapons, the uncrackable code, the code that utterly frustrated and astonished the Japanese, the subtle, powerful, intricate, and wonderful Navajo language. And now you know the rest of the story. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you realize what an integral part they played in helping us win that war and keep our country free and give us the freedom and liberties that we enjoy today. Hope you have a great day, and until tomorrow, be safe.